David pulled into the parking lot of First National Bank at exactly 1:55 p.m. He always arrived a few minutes early for important meetings. Today was no different. He had been planning this moment for months and everything had to go perfectly. He turned off the engine and took a deep breath. In the passenger seat sat his leather briefcase, packed with documents that told the story of his success. Financial statements, tax returns, bank records, and a detailed business plan that he had worked on for weeks. His tech consulting company was growing fast and he needed a business loan to expand into 3 new cities. David straightened his navy blue suit jacket and checked his tie in the rearview mirror. He looked professional and confident. At 38 years old, he had built his company from nothing. Starting in his garage 7 years ago, he now employed 15 people and had clients across the state. His annual revenue had doubled each year for the past 3 years. Any bank would be lucky to have him as a customer. The bank building stood tall and impressive with its glass windows and marble entrance. David had chosen First National because they advertised themselves as the premier business lender in the city. Their website promised personalized service for serious entrepreneurs. Their loan officer, Mr. Patterson, had sounded enthusiastic during their phone conversation last week. David walked through the heavy glass doors and immediately felt the cool air conditioning. The lobby was spacious with high ceilings, leather chairs, and fresh flowers on every table. Classical music played softly in the background. Everything about the place screamed success and professionalism. He approached the reception desk where a young woman with blonde hair was typing on her computer. She looked up with a bright smile, but something changed in her expression when she saw him. The smile became smaller, more forced. "Good afternoon. I'm David Johnson. I have a 2 o'clock appointment with Mr. Patterson about a business loan," he said politely. The receptionist stared at him for a moment, then looked back at her computer screen. She clicked her mouse several times and frowned. Johnson, let me check on that." David found this odd. He had confirmed the appointment just yesterday. Patterson's assistant had even sent him an email with the meeting details and a list of documents to bring. "Yes, here it is," the receptionist finally said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. "Please have a seat. Mr. Patterson will be with you shortly." David thanked her and chose a leather chair near the window. He placed his briefcase beside him and looked around. The bank was busy with the usual afternoon crowd. Tellers helped customers cash checks and make deposits. Loan officers sat in glass offices along the back wall meeting with clients. At exactly 2 o'clock, David watched a white man in his 50s walk into the bank. The same receptionist immediately stood up and greeted him warmly. "Mr. Williams, right on time. Let me get Jennifer for you." Within 30 seconds, a loan officer emerged from her office and escorted the man inside. David checked his watch. It was now 2:05 p.m. He wasn't concerned yet. Meetings sometimes ran late. A few minutes later, another man arrived. This one wore jeans and a casual button-down shirt. He looked to be in his 20s. The receptionist smiled and made a quick phone call. "Your loan officer will be right out," she told him. Sure enough, another bank employee appeared and walked the young man to an office. David shifted in his chair. It was now 2:15 p.m. He had been waiting longer than both men who arrived after him, but he told himself to be patient. Good things came to those who waited. The bank lobby continued to fill with customers. David watched the flow of people carefully. He noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Every white customer who mentioned having an appointment was immediately helped. Every single one. They barely had to wait at all. A middle-aged white woman walked in at 2:20 p.m. "I'm here for my business loan consultation," she told the receptionist. "I think I'm a few minutes late." "No problem at all, Mrs. Davis. Mr. Thompson is ready for you." The woman was escorted to an office immediately. David felt heat rising in his chest. He approached the reception desk again. "Excuse me, I've been waiting about 25 minutes now. Is Mr. Patterson running behind?" The receptionist barely looked up from her computer. "He's with another client. Please just wait. He'll be with you when he's available." Her tone was different now. Colder, less helpful. David noticed she had been much warmer with the other customers. He returned to his seat but found it harder to sit still. David was a successful businessman. He was used to being treated with respect. His current bank always made him feel valued. His accountant had praised his financial records. His lawyer had called his business plan bulletproof. Yet here he sat, watching person after person get helped before him. At 2:35 p.m., another white man walked in without an appointment. He wanted to open a checking account. The receptionist called someone immediately, and within minutes he was sitting in an office filling out paperwork. David's patience was wearing thin. He had taken time off from work for this meeting. His employees were handling important client calls in his absence. He had turned down a lunch meeting with a potential new client to be here on time. The classical music that had seemed pleasant before now felt mocking. The leather chairs felt cold. The fresh flowers seemed fake. David began to notice other things too. The security guard had positioned himself where he could clearly see David's every move. Bank employees who walked by glanced at him with curious looks, as if wondering why he was there. His phone buzzed with a text message from his business partner. "How did the bank meeting go?" David stared at the message but didn't know how to respond. The meeting hadn't even started yet. At 2:45 p.m., David approached the desk for the third time. "I really need to know when Mr. Patterson will be available. I've been waiting almost an hour." The receptionist sighed as if he was bothering her. "Sir, I told you he's busy. All our loan officers are with clients right now. You'll just have to wait your turn." But David had been watching carefully. He knew for a fact that 2 loan officers were sitting in their offices alone, catching up on paperwork. He had seen at least 3 other loan officers finish with clients and take new ones, but none had called his name. Something was very wrong here. David was starting to understand that this wasn't about being busy or running behind schedule. This was something else entirely. He walked back to his chair, his mind racing. David had heard stories like this from other business owners, but he had never experienced it himself. He had always been treated fairly by banks, shops, and restaurants. His success and professional appearance usually opened doors, but today felt different. Today, David was learning something new about the world, and he didn't like what he was discovering. The clock on the wall now showed 2:50 p.m., 50 minutes of waiting and counting. David opened his briefcase and looked at his carefully prepared documents. All that work, all that preparation, and he was still sitting in the lobby like he didn't matter. He decided to wait a little longer. After all, he really needed this loan. His business expansion depended on it. But deep down, David was starting to suspect that no amount of waiting was going to change what was happening. Here, the clock on the wall now showed 3:15 p.m. David had been sitting in the same leather chair for over an hour. His back was starting to ache and his patience had completely vanished. But something else was growing inside him. A quiet determination to see this through no matter how long it took. He pulled out his phone and began taking notes. 3:15 p.m., still waiting. Watched 7 people get helped before me, all appointments after mine. David wasn't sure why he was documenting everything, but his business instincts told him to keep records. The bank lobby had become like a stage, and David felt like he was watching the same play over and over. White customer enters. Receptionist smiles warmly. Loan officer appears quickly. Customer disappears into office. Repeat. At 3:20 p.m., a man in work boots and a construction vest walked in. His hands were dirty and his clothes had paint stains. David watched him approach the reception desk. "I need to apply for a home improvement loan," the man said. "I don't have an appointment, but I was hoping someone could see me." The receptionist nodded enthusiastically. "Let me see what I can do." She made a quick phone call, and within 5 minutes a loan officer came out to greet the construction worker. They shook hands and walked toward an office together. David felt his jaw tighten. A walk-in customer with dirty clothes was getting immediate service while he sat there in his expensive suit, still waiting for his scheduled appointment. He approached the reception desk again. This was his 4th time. "Ma'am, I really need to speak with someone about my appointment. I've been here for over an hour and 15 minutes. People who arrived after me have been helped immediately." The receptionist didn't even look up from her computer. "Sir, I've already told you multiple times, Mr. Patterson is busy. You need to wait. Can I speak with another loan officer then? I see that Mr. Chen and Mrs. Rodriguez both appear to be available." Now she looked up, and David didn't like what he saw in her eyes. "Mr. Patterson specifically handles your type of account. You'll need to wait for him." "Your type of account?" The words hung in the air like a bad smell. David knew exactly what she meant, even though she hadn't said it directly. "What type of account would that be?" David asked quietly. The receptionist's face turned red. "I just meant business accounts. That's his specialty. But David had been watching. Patterson wasn't the only business loan officer. 3 other people in this bank handled business loans, and he had seen them all working with clients throughout the afternoon. David returned to his seat, but now he felt different. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with something else, sadness maybe, or disappointment. He had worked so hard to build his business, to earn respect, to prove himself. But apparently none of that mattered to the people in this bank. His phone buzzed with another message from his business partner. "Everything okay? Your 3:30 client called looking for you." David had completely forgotten about his next appointment. A potential client worth $50,000 in annual revenue was waiting for him back at his office. But he couldn't leave now. Something inside him refused to give up. At 3:35 p.m., 2 women walked in together. They were clearly friends, laughing and chatting about their plans to start a catering business. Neither had an appointment, but they hoped to speak with someone about a small business loan. David watched the familiar dance begin. The receptionist smiled. Phone calls were made. Within 10 minutes, both women were sitting in a conference room with 2 loan officers, looking at paperwork and shaking hands. David stood up and walked to the large windows overlooking the parking lot. He needed to move, to think, to process what was happening. In the reflection of the glass, he could see the security guard still watching him. The man had been keeping an eye on David for over an hour now, as if he was some kind of threat. The irony wasn't lost on David. Here he was, a successful business owner with excellent credit and substantial income, being treated like a criminal. Meanwhile, people with no appointments and uncertain financial situations were being welcomed with open arms. He thought about his father, who had warned him about situations like this. "Son," his dad had said years ago, "success doesn't protect you from everything. There will always be people who see your skin color before they see your achievements." David had disagreed at the time. He believed that hard work and success would always speak louder than prejudice. He thought his generation had moved past these problems. But sitting in this bank lobby, he was starting to understand what his father meant. At 3:45 p.m., David decided to try a different approach. He walked to one of the loan officer windows and knocked gently. A middle-aged white man looked up from his computer. "Excuse me, I'm David Johnson. I have an appointment with Mr. Patterson, but I've been waiting for almost 2 hours. Is there any way you could help me instead?" The man looked uncomfortable. He glanced toward the reception desk, then back at David. "I'm sorry, but Patterson handles all the... He specifically requested your file. I can't really interfere with his schedule." David noticed the pause. "All the what?" What was the man about to say? "Could you at least tell me how much longer he'll be? I have other appointments today. I honestly don't know. Maybe you should reschedule." "Reschedule?" After waiting nearly 2 hours, David felt something snap inside him. "I'm not rescheduling. I'll wait as long as it takes." The loan officer shrugged and went back to his computer. David returned to his chair, but now his mind was working differently. He started paying attention to conversations around him. The bank employees weren't being subtle about their whispered comments. "Why is he still here?" he heard one teller say to another. "I don't know. Patterson told him he'd have to wait. Maybe he should try one of those community banks instead." David felt his hands clench into fists. Community banks. Code words that everyone understood. At 4 p.m., exactly 2 hours after his appointment time, David watched something that made his blood boil. Mr. Patterson himself emerged from his office. David recognized him from his photo on the bank's website. Patterson walked right past David without even a glance and approached the reception desk. "Any more appointments today?" Patterson asked loudly enough for David to hear. "Just the Johnson appointment at 2 o'clock, the receptionist replied. Patterson looked directly at David, then back at the receptionist. "What's his story?" "Business loan. Says he owns some kind of consulting company." Patterson nodded slowly. "I'll get to him when I can. I need to finish some other things first." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. They were talking about him as if he wasn't sitting 10 feet away. Patterson had been in his office the entire time, not busy with other clients. He had simply chosen not to meet with David. The realization hit David like a physical blow. This wasn't about being busy or running behind. This was deliberate. They were making him wait on purpose, hoping he would give up and leave. But David Johnson hadn't built a successful business by giving up when things got difficult. He had faced rejection before, overcome obstacles, and push through challenges that would have stopped other people. He opened his briefcase and pulled out his financial statements. His company's revenue last year was over $2 million. His personal credit score was 780. His debt-to-income ratio was excellent. On paper, he was exactly the kind of client any bank would want. But apparently, paper didn't tell the whole story. David settled back into his chair and crossed his arms. If they wanted to play this game, he would play it. He had nowhere else to be. His afternoon was already ruined. His client meeting was already missed. At this point, he was staying out of principle. The security guard shifted nervously, clearly wondering why this well-dressed man was still sitting in the lobby after 2 hours. David looked at him and smiled. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." At 4:10 p.m., Mr. Patterson finally approached David. The man looked exactly like his website photo. Middle-aged, gray hair, expensive suit, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But in person, Patterson carried himself with an attitude that David recognized immediately. It was the look of someone who had already made up his mind before hearing a single word. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Robert Patterson. Sorry to keep you waiting." Patterson's handshake was weak and brief. He didn't apologize for the 2-hour delay or explain why he had made David wait while helping others. "Thank you for seeing me," David replied, though he wanted to say much more. He followed Patterson to a small office near the back of the bank. The space was cramped and felt more like a storage room than a professional meeting area. David noticed that all the other loan officers had larger, more impressive offices with windows and comfortable seating. Patterson sat behind his desk and didn't offer David any coffee or water. He didn't engage in the usual small talk about the weather or how David's day was going. Instead, he got straight to the point in a way that felt more like an interrogation than a business meeting. "So you're looking for a business loan. What kind of business do you run?" Patterson asked, though he was looking at his computer screen instead of making eye contact. "I own a technology consulting firm," David replied, opening his briefcase. "I brought all the financial documents you requested, including 3 years of tax returns, profit and loss statements, and a detailed business plan for expansion." David began placing the documents on Patterson's desk, but the loan officer barely glanced at them. "Technology consulting," Patterson repeated with a tone that suggested he didn't believe it. "And how long have you been in business?" 7 years. We started small, but we've grown significantly each year. Our annual revenue has doubled consistently, and we now employ 15 people. David pulled out his most impressive financial statement. Last year, we generated $2.1 million in revenue with a profit margin of 32%. Our client retention rate is 94%. Patterson finally looked at the document, but only for a few seconds. "And what makes you think you qualify for a loan with us?" The question caught David off guard. What made him think he qualified? His excellent credit score, substantial income, growing business, and perfect payment history on all existing loans. He was exactly the type of client banks competed for. "Well, my financial records speak for themselves," David said calmly. "My credit score is 780. My business is profitable and growing. And I have a solid plan for expansion that will create jobs and generate additional tax revenue for the community." Patterson leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "Mr. Johnson, I have to be honest with you. Our lending standards are quite strict. We're not like some of the smaller banks that might be more accommodating to your situation." Your situation. There it was again. David felt his jaw clench, but he kept his voice steady. "What situation would that be exactly?" Patterson seemed to realize he had said something inappropriate. He fumbled for words. "I just mean new businesses, technology companies, that sort of thing. Very risky investments for a conservative institution like ours." But David had done his research. First National Bank had approved dozens of loans for technology companies in the past year. Their own marketing materials bragged about supporting innovative businesses and entrepreneurs. "Actually, I believe your bank has a strong track record of supporting tech companies," David said. "I saw your press release about the Peterson software loan just last month. Similar company size, similar revenue projections." Patterson's face reddened slightly. "Every situation is different. Look, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to save us both some time here. Based on what I see, I don't think we can help you." "But you haven't even looked at my documents," David protested. "You haven't reviewed my business plan or financial projections." "I've seen enough," Patterson said dismissively. Our loan committee is very particular about the types of businesses we support. Your company just doesn't fit our current lending profile." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Patterson was rejecting his loan application without even reviewing it. No questions about his business model, his clients, his expansion plans, or his financial stability. "Can you be more specific about what doesn't fit your profile?" David asked. "Is it the industry? The loan amount? My credit history?" Patterson stood up, clearly trying to end the meeting. "Look, it's nothing personal. We just have certain standards we have to maintain. I'd suggest you try one of the community banks downtown. They might be more willing to work with someone like you." Someone like you. The phrase hung in the air like a slap across David's face. Someone like me meaning what exactly? David asked, his voice getting sharper. Patterson realized he was digging himself into a hole. "I mean someone with your type of business. Small consulting firms can be risky investments." But David's company wasn't small anymore. It was a multi-million-dollar operation with a proven track record. And Patterson knew it because David had spent 10 minutes explaining their success. "Mr. Patterson, I've been in business for 7 years. I employ 15 people. My revenue last year was over $2 million. My credit score is 780. What exactly makes me risky?" Patterson was clearly uncomfortable now. He started shuffling papers on his desk nervously. "Like I said, every case is different. Our lending committee has very specific criteria." "Then let me meet with your lending committee. Let me present my case properly." "That won't be necessary. I can tell you right now that they wouldn't approve this type of loan." David felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice controlled. "This type of loan meaning what? A business expansion loan for a profitable company with excellent credit?" Patterson was getting frustrated now. His professional mask was slipping. "Look, Mr. Johnson, I'm trying to save you some time and disappointment here. Why don't you try First Community Bank across town? They specialize in your demographic. The words hit David like a physical blow. There it was. The truth that Patterson had been dancing around for the entire meeting. "My demographic," David repeated slowly. "And what demographic would that be?" Patterson's face went pale. He realized he had finally said too much. "I just meant small business owners. That's their specialty." But David wasn't buying it anymore. He had heard enough code words for one day. He had been patient, professional, and polite. But he was done pretending this was a normal business meeting. "Mr. Patterson, I want you to be very clear about why you're rejecting my loan application. Is it my credit score? My income, my business plan? My industry experience? Because I'd like to understand exactly which of my qualifications doesn't meet your standards." Patterson was sweating now. "It's just a business decision. Nothing more." "A business decision based on what criteria exactly?" The silence stretched between them. Patterson couldn't answer because the real answer would get him fired and probably sued. David knew it, and Patterson knew that David knew it. "I think we're done here," Patterson said finally. David slowly packed his documents back into his briefcase. Every paper represented hours of work, careful preparation, and genuine excitement about growing his business. Now they felt worthless. "You're right," David said quietly. "We are done here." He stood up and walked toward the door, but then he turned back. "Mr. Patterson, I want you to know that I've never been treated this way by a financial institution. I've had loans from 3 different banks, and I've never been rejected without a proper review. Today has been educational." Patterson didn't respond. He was staring at his computer screen, probably hoping David would just leave. David walked back through the lobby toward the exit. The same receptionist who had made him wait for 2 hours avoided making eye contact. The security guard watched him carefully as if David might cause trouble. But David wasn't going to cause trouble. He was simply going to leave and take his business elsewhere. His $2 million in annual revenue, his 15 employees' payroll accounts, his business credit cards, and his future banking needs would all go to an institution that valued him as a customer. As he pushed through the glass doors, David felt a mixture of anger and sadness. He had worked so hard to build his success, believing that achievement and merit would always speak louder than prejudice. Today had taught him otherwise. But David Johnson wasn't the type of man to give up. If First National Bank didn't want his business, plenty of other banks would. He would find financing for his expansion, create those new jobs, and continue growing his company. And he would never forget how he was treated here today. David had his hand on the glass door, ready to leave First National Bank forever, when he heard voices behind him. Two people had just entered through a side entrance near the executive offices. Their conversation carried across the lobby. "The quarterly numbers look fantastic," a woman's voice said. "Did you see the tech sector growth? We need more clients in that space." David turned around and saw two people in expensive suits walking toward the elevator. The woman was Asian American, probably in her 40s, carrying herself with the confidence of someone important. The man beside her was older, white with gray hair and the kind of watch that cost more than most people's cars. "Absolutely," the man replied. "Innovation companies are the future. We should be courting every successful tech entrepreneur in the city." David felt a bitter laugh rise in his throat. Here were bank executives talking about wanting more tech clients, while their loan officer had just rejected him without even looking at his paperwork. The woman pressed the elevator button and noticed David standing near the door. Something about him caught her attention. She looked at him more carefully, and suddenly her face lit up with recognition. "Excuse me," she called out. "Aren't you David Johnson?" David stopped, surprised. He didn't recognize her, though she clearly knew him. "Yes, I am," he replied cautiously. The woman walked toward him with a big smile. "I thought so. I'm Jennifer Liu, Regional Vice President here at First National. We met at the Technology Innovation Conference last month. You gave that brilliant presentation about artificial intelligence in small business operations." David remembered now. The conference had been one of his proudest moments. He had been invited as a keynote speaker, sharing the stage with executives from major corporations. His presentation had received a standing ovation, and dozens of people had approached him afterward to discuss potential partnerships. "Yes, of course," David said, though he was still confused about why she was here and why she seemed so happy to see him. "This is perfect timing," Jennifer continued. "David, meet William Foster, our Executive Vice President. William, this is the entrepreneur I was telling you about. His company is doing incredible work in AI consulting." William extended his hand with genuine enthusiasm. "David, Jennifer has been raving about your presentation. She said your business model was exactly the kind of innovation our bank should be supporting." David shook the man's hand, feeling completely disoriented. These executives were treating him like a valued potential client, while 30 minutes ago their loan officer had basically thrown him out of the bank. "What brings you to our bank today?" Jennifer asked. "Please tell me you're here about banking with us." David looked back toward Patterson's office, then at the two executives. He had a choice to make. He could leave quietly and avoid any awkwardness, or he could tell the truth about what had just happened. "Actually," David said slowly, "I just finished meeting with Mr. Patterson about a business loan." "Fantastic," William exclaimed. "Patterson is one of our best business loan officers. How did it go?" David felt the weight of the moment. These executives clearly had no idea what had just transpired in their own bank. They were genuinely excited about the possibility of working with him. "Well," David began carefully, "Mr. Patterson informed me that I don't meet your lending criteria. He suggested I try a community bank instead." The smiles disappeared from both executives' faces. Jennifer looked genuinely confused. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "From what I remember about your company, you'd be exactly the type of client we're looking to attract." What was his concern? "He said my business doesn't fit your lending profile. He didn't actually review any of my financial documents." William frowned. "How long were you meeting with him?" "About 10 minutes. But I waited in your lobby for 2 hours before he would see me." 2 hours? Jennifer's voice rose slightly. "For a scheduled appointment?" David nodded. "I watched at least 12 other people get immediate service during that time. All of them were helped before me, even though they arrived after my appointment time." The two executives exchanged a look that David couldn't quite read. William's jaw was tightening and Jennifer looked genuinely upset. "David, would you mind coming upstairs with us?" Jennifer asked. "I'd like to hear more about this, and honestly, I'm very interested in learning about your expansion plans." David hesitated. Part of him wanted to just leave and never come back. But another part of him was curious about what would happen next. "All right," he said. They rode the elevator to the executive floor in silence. David noticed that this part of the bank was completely different from the lobby. The hallways were wider, the artwork was expensive, and everything felt more luxurious. Jennifer led them to a conference room with a massive table and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. William closed the door behind them. "David, I want to apologize for whatever happened downstairs," Jennifer began. "Can you walk us through exactly what occurred?" David told them everything. The long wait in the lobby, watching other customers get immediate service, the receptionist's attitude, Patterson's dismissive behavior, and the suggestion that he try banks that cater to his demographic. By the time David finished his story, both executives looked furious. William was pacing by the windows and Jennifer was taking notes on a legal pad. "This is absolutely unacceptable," Jennifer said. "David, I am deeply sorry for how you were treated. This is not how First National Bank conducts business, and it's certainly not how we want to treat successful entrepreneurs like yourself." William stopped pacing and faced David. "Can you tell us about your business? The real numbers, your growth projections, your expansion plans?" For the next 30 minutes, David found himself in the meeting he had originally hoped to have. Jennifer and William asked thoughtful questions about his business model, his client base, his revenue projections, and his plans for expansion. They reviewed his financial documents carefully and asked for clarification on several points. "This is impressive," William said finally. "Your growth trajectory is exactly what we look for in business lending. Your credit profile is excellent, your cash flow is strong, and your expansion plan is well thought out." Jennifer nodded in agreement. "David, based on what I see here, I'm prepared to pre-approve your loan request today. In fact, I think we can offer you better terms than what you originally requested." David felt his head spinning. In the span of an hour, he had gone from being rejected without consideration to being courted by bank executives. "But what about Mr. Patterson's concerns?" David asked. "He seemed quite certain that I didn't meet your lending criteria." The two executives exchanged another look. This time David could read their expressions clearly. They were angry. "Mr. Patterson was wrong," Jennifer said firmly. "Dead wrong. And his behavior today was completely inappropriate and possibly discriminatory." William sat down across from David. "David, I want to be direct with you. Based on what you've told us, it sounds like you may have been the victim of racial discrimination. That's not just wrong, it's illegal, and it goes against everything this bank stands for." David felt a mixture of relief and vindication. These executives were acknowledging what he had experienced, something Patterson would never admit. "What happens now?" David asked. "Several things," Jennifer replied. "First, we're going to process your loan application properly and get you the financing you need for your expansion. Second, we're going to launch an immediate investigation into what happened today. And third, we're going to make sure this never happens to anyone else in our bank." William leaned forward. "David, would you be willing to document everything that happened today? We'll need a detailed account for our investigation." David thought about it for a moment. He could just take the loan and move on with his life. Or he could help ensure that other people wouldn't go through what he had experienced. "Yes," he said. "I'll document everything." Jennifer smiled for the first time since they had started talking about the incident. "Good, and David? I hope this experience doesn't sour you on working with us. When this bank operates properly, we're very good at what we do." David looked around the conference room, then back at the two executives who had treated him with respect and professionalism. "I think we can work together," he said. 3 weeks later, David sat in the same conference room where his life had changed. This time he wasn't alone. Jennifer Liu sat across from him with a stack of papers, and William Foster was on speakerphone from the bank's regional headquarters. "The investigation is complete," Jennifer began, her voice serious but satisfied. "David, everything you told us was corroborated by security footage, computer records, and witness statements." David had wondered if anyone would believe his story. In the weeks since the incident, he had replayed every moment in his mind, sometimes wondering if he had overreacted or misunderstood what happened. "The footage shows you waiting for exactly 2 hours and 7 minutes. William's voice came through the speaker. "During that time, 14 customers who arrived after you were helped immediately. Mr. Patterson was in his office for most of that time, not in meetings as claimed." Jennifer slid a document across the table. "We also found some disturbing patterns in Patterson's lending history. Over the past 2 years, he has rejected 68% of loan applications from minority business owners, compared to 12% from white applicants with similar qualifications." David felt a cold anger in his stomach. He hadn't been Patterson's first victim. There had been dozens of others who had experienced the same discrimination, maybe without the luck of running into sympathetic executives. "What's happened to him?" David asked. "Patterson has been terminated," William replied. "We also discovered that he had been coaching the reception staff to delay appointments for certain clients. The receptionist who made you wait has also been let go." David nodded, feeling a sense of justice but also sadness. How many other business owners had walked out of this bank feeling defeated and humiliated? How many expansion plans had been derailed? How many jobs hadn't been created because of one man's prejudices? "There's more," Jennifer continued. "The bank is implementing new policies to prevent this from happening again. All loan officers will receive mandatory training on fair lending practices. We're also establishing an independent review board to examine any rejected applications. And," William added from the speaker, "we're creating a diversity and inclusion task force to review all our hiring and promotion practices. We want to make sure the people serving our customers reflect the communities we operate in." David appreciated the changes, but he knew that policy changes alone wouldn't fix everything. The real change would have to come from people's hearts and minds. "What about my loan?" David asked. Jennifer smiled and pulled out another set of documents. "Approved, obviously. But David, after reviewing your business plan more carefully, we think you're asking for too little money." David raised an eyebrows. "Too little? Your growth projections are conservative," William explained through the speaker. "Based on your track record and market analysis, we think you could expand into 5 cities instead of 3. We're prepared to offer you a larger line of credit at a better interest rate." David looked at the numbers and felt his breath catch. This was more than enough to fund his expansion plans and create the jobs he wanted to bring to 3 different communities. The loan would allow him to hire 25 additional employees and open regional offices that could serve clients across the entire Southeast. "This is incredible," David said, quietly. "There's one more thing," Jennifer added. "The bank would like to feature your company in our next round of advertising. We want other entrepreneurs to see that First National supports innovative businesses. Would you be interested in that?" David thought about it. 6 months ago, he would have been thrilled by the marketing opportunity. Now it felt complicated. This same bank had discriminated against him and many others. Was he comfortable being their poster child for diversity? "Can I think about that?" David asked. "Of course," William replied. "Take all the time you need." As they wrapped up the meeting, David felt a mixture of emotions. He was grateful for the loan and the justice that had been served. But he also felt a responsibility to the other business owners who hadn't been as fortunate. "Jennifer, William," David said as they prepared to leave, "I want to do something for the business owners who were rejected by Patterson. Is there a way to reach out to them and invite them to reapply?" Jennifer's face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. We have their contact information from the loan applications. We could send letters explaining what happened and inviting them to meet with new loan officers." "I'd like to help with that," David said. "Maybe I could speak to them about the process, share my experience. Let them know that the bank is serious about changing." Over the following months, David became an unofficial ambassador for fair lending at First National. He met with dozens of business owners who had been rejected by Patterson, walking them through the new application process and sharing his story. Some of those business owners received loans and expanded their operations. Others decided to bank elsewhere, and David understood their choice. Trust once broken was hard to rebuild. David's own business thrived. With the expanded line of credit, he opened offices in Atlanta, Charlotte, and Nashville. He hired 28 new employees and landed several major corporate clients. His annual revenue grew to over $4 million, but the success felt different now. David had learned that merit and hard work, while important, weren't always enough. He had discovered that his success existed within systems that didn't always treat everyone fairly. So David made changes in his own company. He established mentorship programs for minority-owned small businesses. He required his hiring managers to interview diverse candidate pools for every position. He partnered with local community colleges to provide technology training in underserved neighborhoods. 6 months after the bank incident, David received a call from Jennifer Liu. "David, I have some news that I think will interest you. Remember that advertising campaign we discussed?" "Yes, I remember. We've decided to do something different. Instead of featuring just one business, We want to create a series highlighting diverse entrepreneurs who have succeeded despite facing obstacles. We're calling it Banking on Success. Would you be willing to participate? David thought about all the business owners he had met over the past few months. People who had great ideas, solid business plans, and the determination to succeed, but who had been turned away because of prejudice. I'll do it, David said. But I want to tell the whole story. Not just the success part, but what happened before. People need to know that discrimination is real, but they also need to know that things can change. That's exactly what we want, Jennifer replied. The real story. All of it. The advertising campaign launched 3 months later. David's story was featured prominently, but he wasn't the only one. The bank highlighted 12 different business owners who represented the diversity of their community. Each story was honest about the challenges these entrepreneurs had faced, including discrimination, but focused on their ultimate success. The campaign was controversial. Some people praised the bank for acknowledging past problems and working to fix them. Others criticized them for exploiting discrimination stories for marketing purposes. David understood both perspectives. Change was messy and complicated. There were no perfect solutions or easy answers, but sitting in his expanded office looking at photos of his 28 employees and the 3 new offices he had opened, David felt hopeful. His business was thriving. He was creating jobs in multiple communities, and he was helping other entrepreneurs navigate systems that hadn't always been fair to them. The young receptionist knocked on his door. "Mr. Johnson, your 3 o'clock appointment is here." David smiled. "Thank you, Janet. Please show them in immediately." He had learned that everyone deserved to be treated with respect and professionalism, regardless of their background or appearance. It was a lesson he had learned the hard way, but one he would never forget. The door opened and David stood up to greet his next client. It was a young Hispanic woman with a folder full of business plans and dreams of opening her own restaurant. "Welcome," David said warmly. "I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about how we can help your business succeed." As they shook hands, David thought about how far he had come since that day at First National Bank. He had started that day looking for a loan to expand his business. He had ended up expanding much more than that. He had expanded his understanding of the world, his sense of responsibility to others, and his commitment to making sure that success was available to everyone willing to work for it. The conversation with his new client began, and David listened carefully to her dreams and plans. After all, everyone deserved the same opportunity to succeed.